Welcome. We're so glad you're here today. Thank you so much for tuning in to an informal discussion about the Orphan's Abba, a trauma-informed look at the Bible. We are going to be talking about episode 4 today, matching, and we're really excited about that. Hello, my name is Jim Jurgensen, and I work here at the Boaz Project. I'm the Executive Operations Director. I have a staff member here with me today. Michaela is going to be joining us for our discussion today. I'm going to give her a couple minutes here to introduce herself. Welcome, Michaela. We're super excited for you to be here.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Michaela. I'm the Director of Regional Partnerships for South Asia here at the Boaz Project.
So, Michaela, you and I have talked. We've digested a little bit about this episode 4 on matching. I want to structure this by kind of looking at some of the major chapters in the Bible that April talked about. I just wanted to, before I kind of jump into that, she says a lot kind of in the beginning, and I just wanted to make sure if you had any kind of initial thoughts about it, any kind of just ideas you had, thoughts you wanted to share just kind of in the beginning.
Yeah, I feel like this concept has shown up a lot during the season of Advent. We talk a lot about God coming down to earth and being with us in person. So I feel like God's brought this up over and over again with me recently.
Yeah, me too. And I think it's been really good trying to think about the concept of matching. I'll just be vulnerable here and say, like, I don't know much about just listening to April talk about this, it's probably maybe one of the first times I've even kind of been introduced to the concept of matching. Maybe I probably have heard it, but in terms of sitting down and listening to someone talk about it and teach about it, this was kind of the first time. But it's been good for me to think about it and process. So April started off by just kind of laying the groundwork for matching, and then she jumped into Romans 12:15, which says to rejoice with those who rejoice, and mourn with those who mourn, and how there's that concept of mimicking, I think is what she talked about. I've just come through a time in my life, just even recently, where I've had a mentor, a friend of mine, just recently pass away. And I had the chance to go to her memorial service, which was just a great time. But as each person like got up and talked, and there was kind of like the pastor who got up, and then some family members got up and said a little eulogy for her, and I was holding it pretty tight. Like, I was like, okay, I'm not crying, I'm kind of holding it in. I'm an emotional person by nature, and so I'm just kind of watching and just kind of experiencing the whole thing. Like, we were in this big sanctuary. It was packed with people. She was very well loved in the community, and her a granddaughter got up, and it was very like it wasn't in the program. She just happened to say to her dad, like, I want to get up and say something about her. And so they're just kind of up there on the stage ad-libbing. And she started to cry and get really emotional. And you talk about matching kicking in for me, and this whole concept of rejoicing with those who rejoice and the mourn with those who mourn, really, as I've been processing this, just came to bear on my life. And I lost. I mean, I'm not wailing, but I'm definitely with her. I'm definitely matching her emotion on the stage, and it was just I don't know, it just it just touched me so deeply to see her emotion and to hear her words. My emotion just like welled up from inside me. And I it it was like a little cathartic for
Yeah.
me. It just helped to kind of get it out for me, and because I was just holding it in so tightly. But I just really love this concept. Sometimes I love it,
Yeah.
sometimes it's
Humans are built
hard.
for emotion and built to connect, but that doesn't mean that we always want to be that vulnerable,
We
right?
don't, and it is a little bit off-putting sometimes, but and other times it's very, like I said, just an emotional release that I think is needed.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel about that? Did that concept make a connection for you? Thoughts?
What really struck me in this verse was the rejoice when we rejoice,
Mm,
because
yeah.
I feel like we talk a lot about how Christ came to earth to suffer, which, don't get me wrong, is really important, and I understand why we talk about that the
Mm-hmm.
most, because it's through his suffering that he atoned for our sins, but also because when you're going through hard times, knowing that you have a God who has suffered as a human being is like a
Yeah.
really big deal, right?
Sure.
So I understand why we talk about that the most, but I hadn't really thought about the way that being on earth allowed Christ to rejoice with us as well, and how he takes pleasure in us, and he celebrates with us as well. And I was just having these images of like Jesus on earth, going to parties with the apostles, or laughing and smiling with his friends. And that was just like a really special image that
Yeah.
I don't think we talk about as much, but yeah, that just touched me in a different way this time.
Neat. I love that. So April went on. She talked a couple more throughout, or talked about a couple of other verses here. One in the book of John 1:14, where it talks about the Word becoming flesh, and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. I especially liked that one. She also talked about a passage in the book of Philippians, but I wanted to kind of hone in on this one in John. As I was kind of thinking about that, I often think about Jesus with flesh on. Like when I'm thinking about the own struggles in my own life, I really connect with Jesus, kind of like the human form of Jesus. And when I'm thinking about my own struggles and being able to really just rely on the fact that Jesus struggled with the same things I struggle with, it feels more like he understands me, not that he's, not the all powerful God who doesn't understand my struggles. It just feels a little more like just the whole concept of matching, kind of like, as I'm thinking about it, it just feels like I can approach Jesus a little bit more easily, kind of knowing how he feels about the things I'm going through. And I love that. I love that concept. So how I was thinking about this, where the Boaz Project is concerned, so Boaz likes to, as best as we can, we like for the children that we work with to be put in these smaller family units instead of these large institutions, as you know.
Yeah.
And we do that very thoughtfully. I feel like very deliberately. We put a lot of resources behind that. I mean, it's a major thing for the Boaz Project. And how I feel like matching kind of goes along with that concept is, I think if you're in an institution, and we do serve in areas of the world where there are institutions, and we're talking, 80 to 100 children in a building with very few caregivers, I think our model really helps you to see when there's the struggle with the caregiver, with my mom and dad. And that kind of idea of matching where I can feel like my mom and dad understand my struggles because they're with me in my daily life and they know me. They understand who I am and the things that I'm going through and where I need their help and their support. Just that concept, that idea of matching where Jesus did the same thing for us to provide that connection. How do you process all of that? That's just kind of a way I was thinking about it. What do you think?
It can be really easy to get discouraged if you see what you're striving for as this ideal of perfection that's impossible for you to reach, and it seems so far removed from you. And I can see that with if you have a large institution and you're not living with these caregivers day in, day out, and you're only seeing maybe their best. Ideally, a lot of times we know that the children do not see their caregivers best in those institutions, but you see this high level ideal and you just look at it and go, I can never reach that. But if you see a flawed person who is slowly working to become better, I do think that that's a much more attainable goal. And I know a while ago I was introduced to the concept that we can't go a place we've never seen. And obviously there will always be pioneers of every sort, right? But most of us have a hard time envisioning ourselves being in a position when we have never seen anyone who looks anything like us in that position. And so I think that circles back to another core value of ours, which is working with people who are working in their own communities. We're not sending Americans over. We're partnering with people who are in their own culture, who understand what these children are going through far better than we ever could.
Yeah.
And so these kids are looking up to people who know how to navigate their culture and who have become the people they are within that culture. And they can see that path laid out in front of them, a path that they feel that they can follow.
Yeah. I love that too. I think it just gets all the way back to how the Boaz Project works out our mission in the communities where we serve. And I love, just like you do too, the whole idea of finding these Jesus followers who look and speak and are inside the culture of the children where we serve, and empowering them to minister to orphans. I just love that, and I love how that gives honor and respect to them. But even just, as we're talking about this whole concept of matching, I also love this other verse, and kind of goes along with this, I think, and how we're talking, but it's the one in Hebrews 4, verse 15, where it says, "For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weakness or weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin." I'm not saying that our caregivers aren't, struggling themselves, but I do love the idea, again, in this verse that April brought out. She mentioned that this just brings a whole level of intimacy, and a desire for us to want to be just like our Heavenly Father, and for that to be our striving. I love how our caregivers can be that for our the children that they're trying to care for, and trying to minister to, trying to caregive to, is that to be that someone that they can see, like, okay, you're a Jesus follower, you're trying, you're striving, you have weaknesses, you have things that you're working on. And that, I think that just makes walking with Jesus that much more accessible to the children that are coming into these homes. many of them, they're not coming from a faith background, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some of
Right.
these children are coming in with maybe even no exposure to Christianity, especially in Southeast Asia, in our Asia area. A lot of them aren't having this regular exposure, and a lot of times when they're brought into these homes, could very well be the first time they've ever seen that, right?
Yeah.
So that's the other thing that this kind of shows me too, is this is not only our caregivers trying to show our children and the orphans a way forward, the way forward, but it's a lot of times like introducing them to Jesus, right? What do you think about that? Like how does that hit you? What are your thoughts in terms of kind of what you've seen from some of these children that are coming in traumatized, having probably never seen Jesus? How does that hit you?
I think a lot of the kids aren't used to the love and the mercy and the selflessness that a lot of our caregivers
oh my goodness
show on a daily basis. So many people, specifically in India, will tell them like, why would you do this?
Mm-hmm.
Why would you use your own money to care for orphans?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just such a foreign concept to so many people, that they would give of their own time, their own energy, their own social capital, and their own money to care for these kids. And so when these kids come out of all sorts of situations, some of them are coming from loving families that simply have no way to support them. Some of them are fully orphaned. Some of them are coming from situations where they were used. I think about one little girl. She's not a little girl anymore. She's a grown woman. But one baby that came to one of our partners, who, when they found her, she had been taken by these people to garner sympathy for begging. She was just a prop in that case. Or some of the kids, some of the boys in one of our homes, when their parents could no longer care for them, they were sent to live with an uncle. But the uncle didn't care for them like he would care for his own children. He didn't love on them and feed them and send them to school. He sent them to work to make money. And these were little kids. Like they weren't teenagers even. So the opportunity to come into our homes and wake up every day knowing that there will be food, that there will be love, that there will be support, is just a huge testament to Jesus's heart. Yeah. And I think it really ministers to his heart as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, that's kind of reaches the end of what I have here that I wanted to talk about. I didn't know if you had any additional things you wanted to talk about or cover as you kind of listened and processed this episode 4 about matching. Is there anything else you wanted to mention?
Yeah, I have one other major thing that I thought about when I was listening to this episode and thinking about the Boaz Project's model and all of the ways that I really, really love what we do. I was thinking about visiting our partners and how important it is to be in their culture and sit down across from the table with them and eat their food and sit on the floor like they do and talk to them.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be awkward, right? We're trying to navigate some cultural things that we don't fully understand. We're trying to navigate language and accent barriers, and it's not always easy. But the relationship building that happens when you're sitting across from each other, there's just no substitute for it. I mean, during pandemic and the lockdown, there was, from the time we had our last trip before, because our next trip was scheduled March of 2020, right? Until we were finally able to go back to India was 3 years that we didn't get to visit with them. And during that time, we started having quarterly Zoom meetings, and I love them. It's an amazing way to catch up with people we haven't seen, and I wouldn't trade that for sure. But it is no substitute for sitting down next to them. Totally
Yeah. Love it.
And not only do we experience all the joys and beauty of their culture, but we also get to kind of start to get an understanding of some of the difficulties they face as well. And we get to know and appreciate them more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's just no substitute for
that kind of matching.
For that kind of matching.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Well, we sure hope you enjoyed our interaction over episode 4, matching. We're going to continue to do this. There'll be other people here in the seat with me as we go through other episodes of the podcast and do our best to kind of talk about them kind of informally like this. If you enjoyed what you heard today, I'd love for you to come back and hear some more dialogue and processing about April's podcast. But until then, we sure hope you are having a good day, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.